everyone. In the interest of time, we'll kick it off. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Zeno Temple. I'm the president of the Just Us movement. I'm super excited for this collaborative conversation today. In recognition of Independence Day earlier this month and the core themes of freedom, justice, civil liberties, and above. The Just Us movement will host a webinar or is hosting this webinar to educate individuals and families on their legal rights and encounters with law enforcement and immigration officials. This timely conversation is really important. As we all know, and we've seen throughout our social medias or in the news, it's really important to have the practical knowledge to empower our historically marginalized communities with the tools to navigate high stress and a lot of the times confusing legal situations. So I'm really excited that we have this platform to be able to have this conversation here. July is a month of celebrating liberty. It makes it a powerful time to center this conversation around rights-based education. So I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. So I'll pass it off and they can introduce themselves because they have so much to talk about and so much to provide to you all. Really quick before I pass it off, I just want to say that everybody that's here today and everyone seeing this video later on, we really appreciate you all, being here because it's really important to not only spread this important information, but also to educate others. So whatever you take from here and spread it on to the world, it's really important. So I'd love to pass it off and we'll start with Tahira. I'll pass it off to you first.
Hi, Zeno. Hello to everyone. Thank you for having us. Thank you to the Just Us movement for facilitating this conversation. My name is Tahira Amatul Wadud. I am an attorney. The three things that I think are most important about my background that I bring to the conversation is that I've been a public speaker and advocate on issues of racial justice, marginalized identities, and currently I am the executive director and Chief Legal Officer for CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Massachusetts office. And right now, like a lot of nonprofits that are serving people of color, we are inundated with calls from people who are suffering with issues around immigration. And so our fingers are on the pulse of this as a topic, and I'm very excited to share our experiences and lessons we've learned with you all.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll pass it to Nicole.
Thank you, Zeno. I am Nicole Micciarone. I am an immigration attorney in Boston at Cameron, Micciarone and Sylvia. I've been practicing immigration law for over 12 years now, and I've seen a lot of changes over the last 12 years. I'm really excited for the panel today because I think it's an important subject, especially given everything that's going on. And it's really important for people to be aware of their rights and the realities of the situation right now. I do a lot of asylum work. I work with a lot of detained people, and I have a lot of cases involving domestic violence, sex abuse, human trafficking, those sort of issues, but I really have seen the whole immigration spectrum.
Thank you so much for that. And as you all can see, we have some very highly educated, highly impressive individuals here with us today speaking and talking about these important issues. I think first things first, I would like to start just with a general question and open up to either of you or both of you and ask, as an attorney, what are some good practices you've seen that civilians should follow when interacting with any type of law enforcement, not only just, ICE or the police, just any law enforcement in general?
I would say that be cautious when you're interacting with any law enforcement. I always remind people you do not have to speak with law enforcement unless there is a warrant. Even then, you do not have to speak with law enforcement. I always advise people to be respectful, but beyond that, you can say, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk right now, and walk away, or I don't want to answer questions, or if you are being charged with a crime or you think you're being considered as a suspect, you can ask for your attorney to be present. Law enforcement often doesn't make it sound optional, but you can decline to speak with them at any point in time.
My advice is essentially that we first acknowledge that when you're engaging with law enforcement from a perspective other than you reaching out because you need assistance, those relationships and those interactions are very, very stressful, and they're very scary. And if people do not have points of reference for how to do it, or they don't have training on how to do it, and particularly if we're talking about those with some form of an immigration status or some other vulnerability, this is a very nerve-wracking situation for them. So in the first instance, I would say, and I'm speaking more towards those of us who have the ability to guide those who may not know, is I actually believe in doing some role plays. And this will teach folks how to say the words, I don't want to answer that question, or I have a lawyer. So role playing to me is very, very important. Otherwise, engage with respect, engage carefully. Immediately after the encounter is over, write notes about what happened, who you encountered, who saw what. And again, the nature of the encounter depends on what your role in that encounter was. One thing that we are seeing in our office is an increase in hate crimes directed towards Muslims. And we are complaining about the lack of urgency that police departments are dealing with those, and the way that they are reluctant to describe them as hate crimes. And so while they may be being pursued in the first instance as crimes, we will advocate that they are treated as hate crimes. But a lot of times that is dependent on the person, the victim in this case, and what they've seen and how they're able to make the case for that additional charge.
I want to kind of follow up with that, right? You talked about care and the things that you're seeing right now and the patterns that are being exhibited throughout the Commonwealth. So what have you observed in the Muslim communities, going a little bit more into that, and how they're policed or surveilled? And how can people protect themselves in these moments? You know, we spoke about how you can't depend too much on law enforcement for these situations, but so how can people protect themselves?
Yes, the engagement with police departments and the Muslim community is troubling at best. And we've brought this not only to the attention of the governor, but also the attorney general. People are reluctant, one, to, even as victims, to seek help from members of law enforcement if they're the victims of crime, because they're afraid that could turn on them. And again, with respect to immigration status, and I know Nicole can speak on this as well, they also don't want to put themselves on the radar or bring any other further attention to themselves. And so you have people who are victimized, who are hurt, but will not seek support. These are issues that I don't think, when we talk about law enforcement and we talk about immigration, I don't think historically we assign to that image of who's having these encounters the image of it being a Muslim. Like, we see this as an issue for those who are Hispanic or those who are Black, and not to say that those two demographics can't also be Muslim. However, it is also very uniquely and very dangerously, because of someone's identity as Muslims, that they are often not only surveilled additionally, but also not taken seriously. And like a lot of groups, also there's a level of underreporting when they're hurt. And what I like to do is name these as issues and make sure that the greater Muslim community understands this is a Muslim community problem as well. It's not an other problem, it is an us problem.
I think
Follow up on that
Okay.
a little bit. I always tell people that if they are the victim of a crime, they should report it. I know that that's really scary, particularly right now, but there are visas for victims of a crime that report and cooperate with the police. They are great, they're helpful. You need to report it to be eligible for that visa. I used to, until very recently, say there was no risk as far as immigration goes with reporting to the police. Now I no longer say that. I think there is some risk. However, if you are in Massachusetts, that risk is lower. If you do not have a criminal record, that risk is lower. If you're worried about it, I would say talk to an attorney, talk to an organization. Bring a friend with you, document what happened. But if you are in danger or you need to report something, you should get help. and there are resources to help you get that help.
I think that's a perfect segue, Nicole. You just spoke about risks, and I feel like the clients that you represent in the cases that you do, it's all high risk and all high stake. So, what are some of the biggest level like legal risks during like an ICE encounter, and what should individuals say or not say in these encounters from what in your experience?
So it depends who you are in the ICE encounter. Something that I heard recently that I think is really helpful is don't impede, don't concede. If you stand between somebody that ICE wants to arrest and an ICE officer, you will get arrested. You can get charged with a crime. You're putting yourself at risk in that situation. That being said, you do not need to talk to the ICE officer. You do not need to let an ICE officer into your house unless they have a warrant signed by a judge. A lot of times they have administrative warrants. If you're around and you're seeing somebody else being targeted by ICE, I've been advising people to record it. I think it's really important that everybody knows what's going on right now. You can ask them if they are an ICE officer. It's hard to tell right now. They're not wearing uniforms, they're not wearing badges, they're often wearing masks. It's a scary situation. So figure out who they are, but also protect yourself and do what you can to help people around you without putting yourself in danger.
So I guess this opens up to both of you. What should you do in situations where you feel like your rights were violated in those type of situations?
The first thing is to document it and share it. You can talk to a lawyer. Unfortunately, you can't always rectify the situation, especially now, but document it and see what can be done afterwards. And you want to remain respectful, assert your rights, and just stay as calm as you can given the situation.
Yeah, Nicole hit it on the head. I am so deeply disturbed and disgusted by the very real fact that for a lot of folks, there is no what to do next. They're gone. They're held. Some make the news. Some go away quietly. And that is the reality. So when we talk about it being high stakes, you are talking about people who are being separated from their families forever. Not everybody is on the cover of the Boston Globe. They're gone. In Western Massachusetts in 2018, I had run for office. And so I had been out in the community quite a bit. And I was hearing these stories of children whose parents were from Colombia or Guatemala, Venezuela, and they would leave to go to school and they would come back without a parent being home because they have been taken. These families did not make the news. And so those children who themselves may be citizens are now without a parent or parent. We have to underscore the fact this sometimes cannot be rectified. I do not want to sit anymore and pretend that as a lawyer, I have answers and that I have recourse available to folks when we are dealing in a system right now that is extremely harsh, and not just right now, but I said 2018 also, but it's extremely harsh. And for those who do have encounters with law enforcement or immigration, and of course, we know this is a very wide range of language that we're using. And if they have been violated in some way, of course, speak to an attorney. But the things that are breaking our hearts right now are the scenarios for which we have no real recourse because this administration is not playing by real procedural due process rules. And that's the truth.
It feels so hopeless, right? It feels like at every turn we can say, oh, that can be shut down there, that can be shut down there. Like we have no recourse there. We can't do anything here. But I see some great work being done, not only in the legal system and by attorneys like yourselves, right? And I also see it within organizations like you work for and that we're doing today in Just Us and just across the board. So, what do you think should be done more by community organizations to support individuals who may not know their rights or even are hesitant to assert themselves due to fear or trauma or anything like that. How can we help uplift those people?
I think it starts by just telling them that you're out there. A lot of people feel really alone right now, and that is so basic. But I talk to people every day that don't send their kids to school, that have missed really important medical appointments, that don't show up to work because they're too scared to leave their houses. So I think step one is just knowing that there are people out there that are on their side and do support them. I've seen protests at the ICE office on Wednesdays in Burlington, and I think they make a big difference for people that are walking into that office just to see that there are some people out there supporting them and helping them. And then again, if you see something that you consider an injustice, document it, record it. If you can go to an appointment with somebody or walk into that police station if they have to do that, go with them. I think just being there is a really big help.
Agree. I also would say that we have to keep talking about it. There are different levels of privilege in the way that people are experiencing these immigration issues. You have some people who have status in the community, who have money, who have access to power and influence, and still are not documented in the way that would allow them to be carefree, let's say that. But there's a stigma. So nobody wants to go around and say, this is my situation, or I was overstayed my visa and what have you. But I do see the value when folks come to me and they fit that description. And I say, oh my goodness, if this person is at risk with all of these credentials and this identity, think about the person who doesn't know me or doesn't have access to me or come up to me or doesn't speak my language and I don't speak their language and how they're struggling. So naming this as a problem that impacts our neighbors, that making the world smaller so that people realize that those who have resources and power and influence, whether regardless of your status, and those who may not are in the same boat. When we make it everyone's problem and everyone's issue, then perhaps we can be more strong as a collective to address and deal with it. But right now, I do believe that people are in these silos, and it's not a criticism, it is just reality. And the systems benefit when we are not united, when we are isolated. The system is better able to take advantage of us. And that is a big problem. So I would say to continue to name it, to make the world small, to offer resources, and to do the things that Nicole mentioned, like helping to build a community for folks who need it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with both of you. Small plug here in the chat. I just put in a resource, the Just Us movement. We have these red cards, and what a red card is, it gives examples of how people can exercise their rights. It's not legal advice, so, but it's just, a card with information on it. You can sign up to get them shipped to you. Put the link in the chat. But also the IRLC or ILRC, the Immigration Legal Resource Center, is a great resource for anything immigration wise. That's who provided these cards, and we're excited to work with them on these type of efforts. Please take advantage of that. If you know anyone in your communities close by to you, please order some. We'll send them out ASAP. And I'll also talk a little bit more about it later. But Nicole, earlier you spoke about the youth. You spoke about children missing school, missing appointments based off of fear. Can you talk about the protections that exist for minors in immigration enforcement scenarios, and what should caretakers do? I know you mentioned like removing them from those environments, but what else could they do?
So there are not a lot of built-in protections to the immigration system for minors. That being said, anecdotally, I have not seen them take as many minors into custody as adults. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen because I have seen it happen. But I think there is limited detention capacity for unaccompanied minors. There is also more and more family detention, so they may be detained with a parent. There is no automatic right to counsel for minors in immigration court. So finding legal representation for children that need help in immigration court is really, really important because it's so overwhelming for anybody to represent themselves. And you go to court and you can see a 6-year-old child trying to represent themselves before an immigration judge, and it does not work. So come up with a plan for that. There are organizations that help with this. Kids in Need of Defense, KIND is a really good one, and they can connect you with different pro bono attorneys or different organizations. However, they're very short-staffed right now. All of their federal funding was cut, along with most other immigration nonprofits. But find those resources in advance. The other program for minors that I always mention, because not everybody knows about it, is Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. That is in Massachusetts for any child who is under 21 and has been abused, abandoned, or neglected by at least one parent. So if a dad or a mom is not involved in a child's life, if a parent is deceased, they likely qualify, and it is a path to residency. If that is not filed in time, you lose that opportunity forever. So a lot of communities do not know about that. So it's important to just spread the word and see if people qualify, or especially children, qualify for that program.
Tahira, what are some of the myths that you've seen out there or misinformation that you often encounter when regarding to civil liberties or interactions with law enforcement? That one is a big one for me because I see a lot of misinformation a lot, and as everyone does.
Yeah, I think some of the myths that we encounter is maybe around like being a little naive that it'll be okay. If I just answer the question, then they'll leave me alone. But all you have to do is watch a couple of episodes of Law and Order and you know that that's not real. But when you are experiencing that, again, you're inclined to want to help and get it over with. Now, I will pause and say that I'm going to presume that for most people, their encounters with members of law enforcement are like the ones I've had. I ran out of gas on the Mass Pike, I'm so embarrassed to say, about 4 weeks ago, literally. And the state trooper was right behind me when I ran out of gas and I pulled over. I was nervous. I was angry. I was embarrassed. I couldn't read the gas gauge. It was a new to me car. I was very polite. I said to him, I couldn't see the gas gauge, and this is a new to me car. And I'm doing the things that we would tell other people, need to overshare, and I'm doing it because I just felt so compelled and so vulnerable. And he runs the license and registration. And he says, this is a citable offense. You could get a ticket. You could really get into trouble. You've created a dangerous situation. Anyway, he has somebody come throw some gas in the car. I leave. But under another circumstance, that encounter didn't have to go as smoothly as it did. I could have gotten a ticket, right? I'm glad for that. But my point is, most of us have just regular encounters with law enforcement that are fine until we don't. And that's when we have to remember the things around don't overshare, don't try to nice anyone to death, protect yourself, stay quiet, be reserved, and get out safely. And those are the points that are sometimes hard to reinforce and sometimes hard to execute.
100%. And it's depending on the situations, like you said earlier, is everyone has different opportunities to be involved with law enforcement in different ways. And there's situations that, a lot of us have been in where it's been unfavorable, but we just have to remember that people are human and try your best to de-escalate situations as much as you can on your behalf and be the type of person that, can handle yourself and your emotions and your feelings. And not to say, and a shout out to, this is, my personal views, but William McNeil Jr., my heart's with him. I know, people around me's heart's with him in that situation that's happened. And I feel like that's a very relevant topic to this situation. And we'll be keeping a close eye on that with the Just Us movement. But I did want to throw that out there. And if you don't know about that situation, please look it up or read up about it, but not to throw us too far off of where we were, because we see, and speaking back to that situation with Mr. McNeil, how do we kind of balance, and particularly for both of you as attorneys, how do you balance giving legal advice with the reality that fear and anxiety exists in the world because we see so much of it during like in social media, and people have past traumas and have been going through their own things? How do you deal with that? How do you give practical legal advice?
It can be tough. I usually start out by acknowledging that everyone is nervous in these situations, and speaking with an immigration official or law enforcement generally is scary, especially people with past trauma. They can struggle even more to report things, to acknowledge things that are happening, or to talk about it. And as an attorney, you have to recognize the human side of all of that, but also tell them what their rights are and what could happen and what their options are. And it's important to remember that ultimately it's their decision. So you can say, this is what I recommend, or this is what I strongly recommend sometimes, but it's their decision, and you can provide them with resources to make it easier. But not everybody is willing to take the same risks that you think they should, or talk about what happened. And again, it's their life and their decision.
Before we go into more of like a Q&A session for both of you, what's one right or protection that you wish every person in the US fully understood?
Here's my thought. So you asked, what is the right or the thing that I wish, the right that people understood existed for them? I'm gonna mess up your prompt a little bit by saying, I wish that people knew that your rights are something you are always trying to achieve. They are something you are always aspiring to enforce. I have had conversations with people. Remember a conversation with a doctor who came from another country. And I said to him, please consider, it was a political issue. I said, please consider voting, and please consider voting this way on this political issue. And he said, I came from my country to America, and these are my rights, and I'm entitled to them, and I don't need to work anymore to get them. And I said, that's not what my ancestors said in the 60s, so that you could be here. So my point is, the thing that I want people to understand is that your rights are your rights, but it's up to you to enforce them when they are violated. And it is an ongoing exercise. Do never think that you will just be bestowed your rights without making sure that you are enforcing and advocating for them. If not for you, then for the next person for whom they have been denied.
Thank you so much for that. That's so powerful.
I totally agree. For me, that's a tough one. There's a lot of rights that I wish people used more. Fully understood is a little bit different. I think we've already talked about the right to remain silent or to remain reserved in different situations. I also think I'd like to mention the right to due process, which is very much under attack right now. But I wish that people would say, no, I do have the right to due process, and advocate for it, because the government right now is trying to pressure people into giving that up. And I don't want to see people giving that up just because they think they have to. So ask for the hearing, ask what your options are, ask to talk to an attorney. Don't just automatically assume because an ICE officer, any other government agency is telling you this is the way it is, that it has to be that way, without understanding the process and your options first.
Cool. I like 100% before you answered, I already knew what your answer was. You're like, I wish people would stop talking. You're like a lot of forehead slaps at that desk. I know. Well, I think we're at the point to where I would love to open it up to the floor. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists? We can talk about, their work, some of the situations. They can't go into details. So
I have a question. I live in Kennebunk, Maine, and we are being contacted by a lot of people about forming some kind, and we're a very white old state, I mean, but we are really alarmed at what's happening and what's how the government is transforming our legal system in a way that it's incredibly perverted, and it seems a lot illegal to me. But I understand the reality of the situation is that as long as and his minions are in power, nothing substantial is going to happen. It won't happen probably until after he's gone and been replaced. But in the meantime, I think it's important for people like myself who are greatly concerned about what's happening to this country that we stand up and be visible allies to the people who are being victimized here and show our fellow old white people who actually have the power of the vote and maybe some influence. This is something that is of concern to all of us as Americans, and it's not just this subset of people who live here. So what advice do you have for like civilians like myself who really want to intervene and challenge, obviously non-violently, but in a way that maybe gets more notice in the media? If they see people like me getting arrested for intervening, as it happened in Worcester a few weeks ago. I guess I'm just kind of rambling here, but just inventing, just expressing my concern. But what advice would you have for people like me who don't have any real expertise, legal expertise or anything, but who want to help?
There's lots of different ways. It depends how involved you want to get. I will say that there are definitely still immigrants visiting your communities that are impacted by what is happening, whether or not they live there. I have lots of clients that go to Maine and different areas of Maine for landscaping jobs, farming jobs, construction jobs, painting jobs, and they go up there and they have had problems. So notice those people, support them while they're there. There's also different protests and organizations you can get involved with. There's a lot of different court observation programs that are being set up, or escort somebody to an ICE office or to court just for moral support. Those sort of things are all really important and things that you can do.
Yes, thank you. I am connected with some of those groups, just beginning to be included in their discussions.
A person who oversees a nonprofit where we get to deal with the community a lot. I'll tell you a story. Last year, we run a 4-day leadership program for high school students. And last year, the students came in this Thursday through Sunday. So they came in, it was Thursday afternoon. They had already registered in the morning and we were having a session in the early afternoon. One of the foundations that gives us a sizable grant had a representative that had come to speak to the staff just to do our yearly check-in before they were going to issue the next payment. I was very nervous to have one of our funders here with these kids who I never met, thinking about all the ways that could go really crazy. And what were the presenters who were putting on that session for the afternoon? What were they talking about? Or what were they? It was a true leap of faith. But let me say that the two representatives from the foundation had sat down in the classroom. I had told the students that these folks are with a foundation that does give us some money throughout the year, and they want to get to know the work that we're doing, and they're going to take us aside and we're going to talk. But they wanted to see what the program's curricula looked like, just because this was a great opportunity to see us all in person. I was, again, very nervous. Now, I have 36 Muslim high school students spanning all demographics, ages, ethnicities, national origins in the room. And these were two white American folks that were not Muslim. When I said that these people help us, the faces on those kids lit up so much. I don't know what we were talking about, but those kids just got up and started saying stuff like, we love solidarity. We were not talking about solidarity, but they would get up. Let's just say we're talking about, I don't know, imperialism or something. The kids was like, yeah, we love solidarity. We love Muslim, Christian, Jewish solidarity. Nobody asked them that. But one by one, these kids wanted it to be known that they appreciated a community in which people who did not look like them or worship like them stood in solidarity with them. So just showing up meant so much to those 36 students. To look around and it just wasn't a bunch of Muslims in there telling them, you're going to learn how to be a great public speaker, but to turn around and see that these folks who are a little removed from our lives believe that we have a right to exist and have a right to be supported financially, brought those children to life. And then afterwards, they followed us out because one is a doctor and the students wanted some career advice. So the girls, they loved that because he was a gynecologist, and they were like, talk to us about medical school, and oh, they were just so sweet. But I want to underscore that when you are used to being otherized and you're used to being brought to the margins and you're used to being ignored, when people like you with privilege sit in solidarity, it is heard very loudly around that community who thinks that we are isolated and alone largely. So thank you for your question. I hope that you get an opportunity like the one I described to sit in a space and watch how grateful people are that you're standing with them.
Okay, so hearing none, I want to turn it back to our panelists really quickly. Can you talk about a little bit about what's going on at your organizations? Do you want to uplift anything that you have going on that not only that the people in attendance can, maybe see or look up, research, but also get involved in maybe down the line?
So for us, we're at a law firm, so it's a little different than a nonprofit, although we do have a very small nonprofit branch. We're trying to expand here, but we coordinate with a lot of different organizations, and people need support across the board. It can be financial support, it can be a sponsor for getting released on bond. A lot of judges want someone in the United States with status to say, if you release this person, I will support them. It's not a legal obligation, but it does involve sharing some information about the court, writing letters of support. Just being there for people is really helpful. Get to know immigrants in your community however you can. And I think build off of what Tahira said, different groups of people interacting more is better and helpful for everybody in this situation. But people are very stressed out and they're constantly finding themselves in emergency situations where they're cut off from access to loved ones, to finances, bank accounts, schools, medical treatment. So the need is really great across the board. People need emergency childcare, people need sponsors, people need rides. Anything you can do, if you want to do something, we can find somebody for you to help, or an organization with a important work for you.
I would also add that for our group in particular, we have 6 staff members, and all of the 6, 5 of us are Muslim, 5 of us are people of color. And I sometimes think that when you are of the community that you serve in such an intimate way, and very close to issues of immigration, some of our staff members are and have. But when you're very close to this issue, serving in this capacity sometimes is harder. It could be traumatizing, it could be triggering. And if I worked at an organization that was going to rescue puppies and it didn't really involve the issues of my life and my civil liberties and my civil rights, I may leave work and feel differently, right? Like I might be like, okay, I got those puppies at home and I raise money for that organization. But if I am directly impacted by immigration issues, if I am directly impacted by hate crimes against Muslims because I am an immigrant, or I am the daughter of an immigrant, or I am Muslim, or I am wearing a hijab, then I leave my office feeling a little bit more burdened. So I love when people send us notes of encouragement to just say, we're so proud of you. We love the work that you're doing. You're doing such a great job. And when I get those messages in checks or in little donations or little email blurbs from people in the community, I read them in the staff meetings because I want our staff to know that people see us and they believe in us and they support us. Because while we say we want representation matters, we need representation in the workplace, when you bring that representation, you're also bringing wounds sometimes and pain, right? But that is some of the beauty of how change gets made, because if you've experienced these things, you know what needs to be rectified. And it's so deep and it's so intense. But I just, again, I want to name it and just say that the small things matter. Just like representation matters, so do the small things.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you both so much. Can we give them a virtual round of applause, please? Thank you so much for joining us and for speaking, talking about your lived experiences, your professional values, and the things that you do in your day-to-day life. It really means the world. It's not only me, but to Just Us and then to the people also here today. So I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. The next things coming up for Just Us, actually, a quick update. We had our first in-person event the beginning of this month, and we served over 100 people. Took food over to a shelter. It was an amazing opportunity. So our next food event will be in November and December. So if you're interested, we have sign up links in our bio for everybody's. I know somebody that's in here can put that in the chat for me. Thank you. If you're interested and you want to help out, please sign up. You can come out. We also have a local teacher. We have 2 local educators that we're purchasing items for in their classrooms for students so that they can stay strong all year. We're super excited about that as well. It's coming up right around the corner. We'll be posting about it very soon. And then one of the last things is the red cards. Like I mentioned earlier, that's a great resource if you or someone around you needs to know your information and you can identify someone in need of this information. Just let us know. It's completely 100% free. Just fill out the form so we have all your information and we know where to send it. Khadijah, do you have anything? Ashley, do you have anything?
Nothing else that I can think of at this time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
All right, perfect. Thank you all and have a great night and be safe.
Thank you.